Hey, well, what's up, guys? Welcome back to The Collision. Daniel here. And if you've been wishing upon a star for Disney's Pinocchio to finally get the live-action treatment like so many of the other classics, you're in luck. In honor of Disney Plus Day, the new live-action Pinocchio just dropped. I've seen it, so let's talk about it. So here's the thing. Anyone that kind of claims that the 1940s Pinocchio movie is like one of their top 5 favorite Disney movies will probably see their nose grow at least a foot. It is unquestionably, I think this is the weirdest, most bizarre of all the Disney movies. It's dark, it's strange. It's definitely a product of its time. So it kind of makes sense that this movie was kind of left at the bottom of the barrel when, we're remaking Mulan and Lion King and Beauty and the Beast and Cinderella and basically, even Lady and the Tramp got a live action release a couple years ago. And so it kind of made sense, what are you going to do with a weird movie like Pinocchio? But hey, they are getting to the bottom of the barrel. They're scraping it, so they thought they'd take their shot, see what they could do with it. And having seen this movie, it seems kind of clear that maybe they should have left this thing in the barrel. This is not a great movie. This is, in a lot of ways, this movie kind of comes across about as stiff and lifeless as its hero puppet. There's just not a whole lot going on in this movie. And maybe kind of, at least for me, like the one sprinkle of blue fairy magic kind of throughout this whole movie is Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks he's the man. He can do no wrong. It's never a bad idea to have Tom Hanks in your movie. And he stars as Geppetto, the puppet maker, and he's great. He sort of gives a very Tom Hanksy performance. He's charming. He actually gets kind of more characterization even than like in the cartoon. And some of it's a little weird. He's kind of making Pinocchio the puppet kind of as a replica of his deceased child, and some of it, I don't know, it's kind of dark and strange, but he is good. Anytime he's in this movie, he does kind of carry it and kind of adds just a little bit of like the whimsy that is otherwise lost in this film. The story itself kind of stays very true to the original cartoon, kind of following the plot almost beat by beat, kind of like the original. It starts slow. Pinocchio doesn't leave his Geppetto's house to go into the real world until like 26 minutes into the film, which crazily enough, I kind of went back and checked, is actually sooner than the cartoon. The cartoon started slow too, and then kind of from there, the story kind of unfolds as sort of this series of disjointed, kind of more episodic, kind of bizarre adventures. And I think even more so in this remake, because characters like the Blue Fairy and Honest John, the fox and his cat, that kind of make kind of recurrent appearances throughout the cartoon. In this remake, they appear once and then they're gone. You never hear from them again. You never see them again, which does make the film kind of feel a little more disjointed, even than the original cartoon. But this is an 88-year-old story, so kind of inevitably you do get some kind of more modern updates, which end up being somewhat hit or miss. Kind of on the positive side, Pleasure Island, just sort of that that home of depravity where the children just go off and act like animals and become literal animals. In this version, it has been kind of sanitized a little bit and kind of updated. Instead of these children just sort of boozing it up, they're drinking root beer and they're eating kind of sugar and candy rather than cigars. And some of the temptations and stuff become more reflective of modern things, kind of more social media related. Or so it has been updated, and I think maybe that's probably a welcome change. Although on the other hand, a lot of these sort of modern updates just come across kind of cringy. You get the Honest John telling Pinocchio, tempting him to become famous and become an influencer, and you get a Chris Pine joke. This things that, at least for me, to sort of pull you right out of this movie, this kind of classic whimsy tale, and it becomes sort of the more modern take on it. And there is news, so although it does stay fairly close to the original plot and story, they added kind of new material and kind of adjusted some of the existing stuff, which again, most of it falls flat. I think some of it works. I think the ending is sort of a little bit more ambiguous of an ending than in the cartoon, which I'm sure will be somewhat divisive for all you hardcore Pinocchio fans out there. From what I've seen kind of online, people aren't happy with it. Personally, I thought it was great. I actually enjoy this ending more. I think it more fits with sort of what the theme and kind of what they're going for. So I did like that. But as far as the rest of the new stuff in this, most of it is just sort of fluff that's kind of added on because, hey, we got to add something new, so it's not just the very same. There's 4 kind of new songs in this, and all of them are bad. None of them are interesting. The lyrics are just sort of real simplistic. None of the melodies, like I can't remember any of the melodies of the songs. None of them pop like the original ones. And there's some new characters. There's sort of a new kind of female character, and she sort of talks and dances through her puppet that kind of connects with Pinocchio. And she's fine, maybe in isolation. Sort of the idea of the character, you can kind of see what they're going for. But because they are kind of stuck to what the original plot was, and it's kind of what happens from there. And because these new characters aren't a part of that, they end up kind of having no purpose. It just sort of is this like side, hey, here's 15 minutes for this character that we're never going to see again and never going to influence the plot or have anything to do, and sort of a new song, it just feels completely kind of like fat added that kind of distracts from the story rather than adds to it. And even changes that are just sort of completely unnecessary. Monstro, the frightening kind of the whale, the villain in this, which just terrified me as a child. I think one of the most terrifying villains in any of the Disney movies. He's just this big whale that's frightening. Well, in this, he's a full-on sea monster. There's like tentacles coming out of him, and it makes it silly rather than making it more menacing. It looks like some kind of more cartoonish, like bad, sci-fi channel B product. And I don't know. It was just an example to me of like, hey, we need to kind of make this new and different rather than just sort of honoring what was already working in the original. And also, speaking of sort of frightening and sort of the tone, as with the original, this is a kind of a darker Disney story, probably the darkest of all the Disney stories. And I think especially if you have like young viewers, young kids, who I'm guessing this is aimed towards, there will be some stuff that is more frightening, and kind of the more ambiguous sort of shadowy henchmen from the original cartoon are just full-blown kind of smoke monsters, like straight out of Lost, the TV show, and they got glowing eyes, and like the donkey transformation scene, which was horrifying in the cartoon, is also disturbing in the remake. So there is, and even just the whole tone, it lacks some of just the bright colors and charm of the original, and the whole thing just sort of seems a bit more gloomy and mundane, and just sort of a darker, less cheerful take on it. As far as just like content to consider, things to kind of going in to be aware of, or especially if you're watching this with children, profanity. There's no explicit profanity in this. There is a couple kind of like placeholders or allusions to it. Like Jiminy Cricket, he says like "darn," or kind of upon discovering like Pleasure Island, like the underbelly and what's actually happening there. He says it's like I just dropped into HE double hockey sticks, obviously spelling hell. And another time he kind of says, what the cuss is this all about? Using the word cuss kind of as a fill-in for presuming to be like an actual cuss word, almost like they a bleep out kind of gag. And there's sort of some other kind of maybe rude words. One character says bullocks, which is sort of can be used as a slang for kind of male genitalia, although I think it can maybe has broader application than that. And there is sort of a scene sort of that switches, I think, reflect like social media called like Contempt Corner at Pleasure Island, where kids just say rude things to each other, and they carry signs that say things like "I hate you" or "You're ugly" or "Shut your mouth." And obviously those things like fit with the whole purpose of having that scene. But hey, if you're young kids, just be aware of that. And sexuality, there's no sexuality, and violence, there's no violence beyond maybe like the characters turning into donkeys and stuff, which isn't violence, but it is maybe a little disturbing. As far as like things kind of going on beneath the surface of this movie, in a lot of ways, it's the same kind of themes and things that you found in the original cartoon. Although I do think some like the more modern additions to this kind of slightly change the way you interpret it or you understand it. And at least for me, I think actually helps the themes come across maybe a bit more clearly. Kind of the main one, if you've seen the cartoon, is this sort of a conscience, developing a conscience, learning right from wrong. That's sort of the whole premise of the story, that Pinocchio's journey to as sort of this naive newborn or new created being to learn Right from wrong. Jiminy Cricket describes, a conscience as, the still small voice that most of the world refuses to listen to, and you kind of, it's in some ways it's reflective almost of like Paul in Romans 7, when he talks about kind of at war with the flesh, and he knows what's wrong, but he still does it. He knows what's right, and he doesn't do it. And in a sense, that's sort of what Pinocchio, his journey throughout this is. The film does sort of establish that there is sort of this internal sense that we do know kind of what's right and what's wrong, that there is sort of this natural law. And obviously the film doesn't attribute that to like some kind of natural law in a sense of like a Christian sense, but there is that in the film. And kind of the other thing that stood out to me, which is again similar to the original, which has always sort of been this like quasi allegorical kind of parable morality tale. And again, you have the Pinocchio kind of being brought to life, and he begins in sort of this naive and this innocence of the home with his kind of father, his creator, before being sent out into the evil kind of broken world, and kind of in both versions kind of fittingly kind of given an apple right as he leaves, kind of symbolic, again, Adam and Eve illusion. So you have all that again, like you did in the cartoon, but you also, I think, have sort of, in some ways, this film and story reflects kind of this the Jesus' parable of like the prodigal son, which you find in like Luke 15. Because Geppetto in this, he is given a little bit more screen time, a little bit more of a role, and sort of more agency of sort of what his purpose is of pursuing Pinocchio, of sort of going after this son that he's lost, and kind of trying to bring him out, and kind of walking into the rain, into the storm, to do whatever. And at least for me, in a film with not a whole lot of stuff going on that's working, I did like what they did with the character and the relationship between like the creator and his creation, and kind of father son, and you do get kind of a new scene added to this, is that Geppetto, sort of his prize, all his clocks and stuff on the wall, which I think he keeps because they're near and dear to him, because his deceased wife used to love them. And so he keeps them, and as Pinocchio kind of gets back and realizes that Geppetto's gone and he's out rowing a boat about to be eaten by a sea monster, that he'd sold all the clocks in order to buy the boat. And Jiminy Cricket kind of says, those clocks meant everything to him, but you mean more to him than his beloved clocks, more than anything. And then when they do reconnect, Pinocchio and Geppetto, and Pinocchio's apologizing for all the wrong he's done, Geppetto says, all is forgiven, I'm just happy to see you. And even someone that can maybe be grumpy about these sort of remake films, it is a touching moment, and I think it is kind of an inspirational one that does reflect kind of that parable of kind of the prodigal son. But overall, as you can point out, this movie, there's a reason why this movie was just sort of dropped on DisneyPlus with almost no previews. I think the review embargo was like the minute the film dropped. So there wasn't a whole lot of buzz. This is definitely not some kind of event, film to go see that's going to pull on your nostalgia. I can't imagine kids either making it all the way through this movie or wanting to ever watch it again. In no way does it capture the magic of the original, which personally I don't think the original even had that much magic. But almost from top to bottom, this thing's just sort of a misfire. But hey, if you do subscribe to Disney Plus, you get this movie. It's already on there. So hey, maybe you'll check it out. So hopefully some of my thoughts will be helpful in that way. But hey, let me know if you do check this out, or if you're still just unsure whether to check it out, or you have more questions about maybe some stuff I didn't talk about or cover. I'd be happy to answer those questions. So jump in the comment section. Let's have a conversation about this. And if you haven't done so, I encourage you subscribe to this channel. We got a lot of other reviews, hopefully for better movies coming up as we enter the fall. We have our weekly live stream and just other fun stuff we'd love to have you be a part of. But thanks for watching, guys. Stay safe and continue to collide with your world for Christ.